So Politico is now doing Oppo research on Bernie Sanders. Now, they'll pretend like they're not, and no, what do you mean? We just stumbled across this. No, you didn't. You were looking for it, and you found it. And let me be clear. I think the reason why they're doing this is because there's like an organic opposition movement to Biden where I've seen a lot of lefties on Twitter digging up these old things that Biden said that are really devastating and damning and show how terrible he is with his reason and his judgment and his character. So the establishment's reaction to that is to have some Politico hacks go look for old stuff on Bernie. Well, guess what? With Bernie Sanders, he's so principled and so right about virtually everything he said, it's hard to find old stuff that's questionable. Now, there are a few things where you look at and you're like, ooh, well, that was ill-advised. Like, for example, he thought early on, like, whether it be in Cuba or elsewhere, that these leftist governments would be successful. But I don't think he was able to adequately predict or foresee, number one, the amount of U.S. involvement that tries to undermine and undercut these attempts at genuine left-wing governments, but also the turn that many of these left-wing governments have taken towards authoritarianism. So it is kind of cringy when you see old comments talking about the Soviet Union or Cuba or wherever else, But the thing is, Bernie now acknowledges, like, yeah, okay, that was wrong. The Scandinavian model's the way to go. Denmark, Sweden. It's not some sort of authoritarian communism vision. It's more like a social democratic left libertarian vision that makes sense. Now, having said that, they've already trotted out those old tapes in the previous election of, oh my God, Bernie in 1970, whatever, praised Castro. Well, now, here's the new thing they dug up on him. He spoke to kids on an old TV show that he had while he was mayor of Burlington, Vermont. He spoke to children about drugs. This is hilarious. Check it out.
Do any of the older kids, have some problems with drugs occasionally?
No.
Yeah. No? Who wants to talk to me about that one? What about drugs? Is that a problem?
I like Coke.
Okay, do you want to talk about that one? Hold on, who said they like Coke?
Me.
You tell me about that.
I like Coca-Cola.
Oh, Coca-Cola. All right, but who knows about cocaine? Anyone ever seen cocaine?
Yes.
All right. Hold it, one at a time. What about cocaine? Good thing, bad thing, what?
Bad
thing.
Why is it bad?
Because it has a bad effect on the body.
That's right. Do you know people who take drugs?
No.
You don't have to tell me who, but I bet you do.
I do.
Okay. All right. Why do? Hold it. Why do people take drugs? Do you think they're smart?
No.
They think they're big shots.
That's exactly right. They think they're doing something that's very cool. What, in fact, are they doing? Does anyone know what cocaine does to you?
Yes.
No, well, what is it? That's right. It screws up your mind, and it screws up your body. What about even smoking cigarettes? Who here smokes? Let me hear. Come on, raise your hand. Well, other than your parents, who smokes?
Me.
You smoke already? I have seen a lot of kids who are 12 and 11 smoking.
I don't smoke.
All right.
I don't smoke because I'm a little kid. I'm only 5 years old.
Well, I don't want you to smoke. Do you know who can tell me? Hold it. Who can tell me? 1 second, please. Who can tell me why smoking is not very smart?
Because it hurts your lungs.
That's right. What kind of disease does it give you?
Lung cancer.
Have you ever known anybody?
Lung cancer,
Have you ever?
mouth cancer.
That's right. Exactly. Have you ever known people who have had cancer?
No.
Go up.
One of my grandmothers had cancer.
Okay.
I do.
Cancer is a very painful, horrible disease. And one of the causes of cancer is smoking. And smoking also causes a whole lot of other kinds of problems that make you sick. And I think one of the things that bothers me is that sometimes kids think it's very cool to smoke, right? And then they get caught in that habit and they end up getting themselves pretty sick. It's a waste of money and it's not very smart.
He's telling kids, don't do drugs and don't smoke. Where's the scandal? What's the scandal here? I mean, I think what they're trying to say is, oh my goodness, some of the kids around him are even too young for this lesson and don't even know, like, what drugs are yet. I think that's what they're getting at, because I look at the kids he spoke to, and it looks like some of them are old enough where you can have this conversation with them, and some of them are younger than that age where you even expect them to really get what he's talking about. But who cares? Who the fuck cares? It's a good message either way. Don't do cocaine. Don't smoke cigarettes. So I need you to stop and reflect on what this says about establishment media, elite media. What does this say about them? It says they have no Nothing. Nothing. Listen, we spoke about it recently. I think that the most clever they've been to this point is the Boston bomber question. That was incredibly clever because here's what they realized. When we go after Bernie, it doesn't hurt him. If anything, it might help him. Like, his numbers go up every time we try to attack him and we're forthright about it. So then how do we deal with this? How do we take him down when we can't go after him? And the answer they came up with was brilliant. They said, just get him to talk about the few issues where he is out of the mainstream with the American public. Because on 90 to 95% of the issues, Bernie's right in line with the majority of the American people. So just have him pontificate on the few areas where he's not, and he's not even close to in the majority. So what do? They ask him the question, hey, you say you're for felons' voting rights. Do you think rapists should have the right to vote? And do you think that the Boston Marathon bomber should have the right to vote? Like, should terrorists have the right to vote? And he basically said yes. And I definitely heard him because regardless of whether or not if you think that's the right position, 76% of Americans disagree with that right now. And if you're going to disagree with 76% of Americans, you better come correct and you better have an ironclad argument that really kind of assuages their fears. And I don't think he sufficiently did that. I think his answer was not persuasive enough for people. If I was running his campaign, I would have tried to have him dodge that question by basically swatting it aside and saying, hey, listen, I think that you're trying to get me with that question. And you're trying to get a soundbite out of me. And I think the question is a little ridiculous and it trivializes an important issue, which is the people I really care about are the nonviolent drug offenders who have been totally disenfranchised when they shouldn't even be in prison in the first place. That's who I care about. I care about them having the ability and the right to vote. I think that's how we should have answered. He didn't answer it like that. But bottom line is, at least that was clever. Like, the attack on Bernie was really clever, and I think it kind of worked a little bit. This is just like, bro, what? Because anybody who really watches that video, they're going to go, oh, that's fine. I don't see a problem here at all. Now, I think if we're really analyzing this, though, objectively, what they may have been doing here is, it's just a headline gotcha. It's just a headline gotcha. Because the headline in Politico was something like, Bernie Sanders talks to young kids about cocaine. And when I first saw the headline, I was thinking like, oh shit, did Bernie tell these kids that drugs are not all that bad and it's like a freedom situation? Because that was, when I read the headline, that was my initial reaction. Like, shit, did they catch Bernie saying in like the 1970s or 80s or whatever, that like, hey, listen, drugs are a personal choice and it's all about freedom and you have the right to put in your body what you want to put in your body. Because by the way, that's the correct response, but that's not something you tell young kids. That's obvious. We all don't want to go up to kids and be like, crystal meth? Maybe, dog. No. You don't want to do that. That's obvious you don't want to do that. But the headline made me go, oh, did Bernie say, like, this is a freedom thing and he's telling kids that? So the headline may have been the only attack, and they were expecting people to not listen to the clip and not go past the headline. That's very possible, and that's some next-level chess type shit. But I don't know if that's what they were doing. Because certainly when people watch the clip, like I just showed you here, they're going to go, there's nothing wrong with this at all. In fact, it's responsible, if anything. So I don't know what they were trying to do necessarily, but I do know that they don't have much on Bernie, which is why they have to go to stuff like this. And I will say this. You guys know me. I'm not a believer in throwing the first punch. I'm just not. But I'm a deep believer in counterpunching. Huge believer in counterpunching. So, if establishment media is going to come after you like this, you got to hit them back 10 times as hard with oppo on their beloved candidates. So whether it's Buttigieg, whether it's, Kamala, Biden, Beto, all of them. I hope Bernie's team has some awesome oppo research because I don't want to let these motherfuckers get away with anything, dog. I want them to feel our wrath if they come after the king. Because if you come after the king, you better come correct.